Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I am finally bringing you a wave retrospective for the 5th wave of Masters of the Universe Origins. Took a long time to get here because, as always, I'm constantly throwing things on the back burner, playing catch up. But we have now completed the reviews for every figure pictured here in the 5th wave of Origins. So now it's only fitting that I give you guys a full wave retrospective. That being said, if you've seen my retrospectives before, you know how this goes. I'm going to give a brief rundown of the entire wave. I'll give a quick recap on each individual figure. I'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the wave as a whole. And then at the end of the video, I'll give you my final thoughts. So this was one of the bigger waves that have been put out there. Not quite as big as, say, Wave 3, but a lot bigger than 4. So the first thing that we got in this wave was 2 re-releases in the form of He-Man and Skeletor. Mostly the same toys as the first wave figures. However, now they're sporting more vintage-inspired head sculpts, especially He-Man. Skeletor is a little questionable. And they ended up trading out their little combining half-sword pieces for just full swords of power. Both a silver one here, and then it's not pictured, but a purple one for Skeletor. And the reason I don't have Skeletor is he unfortunately doesn't really have a way to hold both the sword and the staff at the same time. But, just picture a purple version of this and you get the right idea. So those 2 were admittedly the least interesting additions to this wave because they're just kind of retreads, but they did give people, more or less what they were looking for. A He-Man figure that looks a lot more like the retro He-Man figure and not, the more cartoon-inspired head that we got in Wave 1. So we can, take a quick look at him here. So he's got all your normal trappings of a regular He-Man toy. He's got the sword, he's got the battle axe, he's got a shield, and then just that much more vintage-looking head. Now, we've actually seen this head already, way back in Wave 3 when they did the battle armor toys. They already went and gave those figures the vintage heads, so there's nothing wholly unique about this. Like, we've gotten the complete Sword of Power in other releases, we've gotten the vintage He-Man head, so it's really just for people that maybe haven't picked up all those different releases and still just want a more vintage-looking He-Man. The Skeletor is in the same boat right here. Mostly the same toy, just with that different sword that I mentioned, and the head that also came with the Battle Armor Skeletor, which admittedly doesn't look very much like his vintage head at all, so they still have some room to improve in that front. So those were kind of our introduction to the wave. Nothing super exciting, just a way of keeping your He-Man and Skeletor presence within the wave, because they, want those guys available like all the time, but at least giving us something a little bit new while we're at it. Then for our regular core assortment figures, we got Faker, who is a blue robotic clone of He-Man, and as such mostly uses the same sculpting, including the vintage head. Gets an orange version of the sword, but then instead of He-Man's chest armor, he actually comes with Skeletor's chest armor. So at least he's not just a direct recolor, which would have been honestly kind of boring if, they just released He-Man and then a blue version of that same exact toy in the same wave. So I'm glad, these 2 aren't completely identical to each other. And Faker, he's really cool. He is just kind of a quick cash-in character. There I go knocking everything over, because that's fun. And then, we get to more interesting figures like Fisto, who actually has a lot of really cool extra tooling. A lot of his stuff is reused. He gets the sword from Triclops. He gets a chest armor from Clamp Champ, sorry. New head, and then he's got this really cool, metal fist. So the forearm that the fist is attached to, and then the fist itself are all new tooling. And, if you saw my review of him, you saw the many jokes that I made about his magnificent mustache, because it's just a really cool looking mustache. And I also really like his colors, very, very earthy tones. We also got the Lords of Power version of Mer-Man. So not to be mistaken with the Mer-Man that came in Wave 3, that was just your classic vintage one. This is the one that was based off of the prototype for the Mer-Man toy back before Masters of the Universe was called Lords of Power. So he does share some tooling with the regular Mer-Man toy, but he also has a lot different. The face sculpt is entirely new, the chest armor is all different, and then even the hands and feet are given a much more unique sculpting to them that makes them look a lot more aquatic and less like just a new head retool of a Skeletor. So, really cool. One of my favorite figures in the wave. Then we got our 2000X Colors Evil-Lyn. Mold-wise, it is the exact same toy that came as the Wave 1 release, but done up in a color palette that resembles the character's appearance from the 2002 or 2000X cartoon. Not the most exciting release. It is just kind of almost a package refresh in the vein of our He-Man and Skeletor. Just, in a color scheme that I personally find a lot more appealing than the one we got with like the, lemon yellow skin. So, yeah, slightly improved version of Evil-Lyn, but still not my favorite toy because she is incredibly simple. Very, very small. It has one tiny accessory, and that's it. That's what you get. All right, next, we got our deluxe figure for this wave, and this is Buzzsaw Hordak, who looks incredibly similar to the regular Hordak released in Wave 4. In fact, most of his parts are the same. What changes, though, is his whole chest, whole torso area right here, where it's now got an opening chest compartment, where you can see a little buzzsaw piece on the side, and his cape acts as a lever to fire out that buzzsaw piece at his enemies. So, another revisit of a toy that was just released previously, and in his case, it was just released in the last wave. I think he's very cool, and I do think he's better than the regular Hordak by, a decent margin. But, again, it's a little more of the same, like Evil-Lyn and, your He-Man Skeletor. Now I want to get to some of the more interesting releases in this wave. So we had a Target exclusive 2-pack that was released and was called Rise of Evil. It included this guy, Keldor, who is a pre-corrupted form of, you guessed it, Skeletor. So much more humanoid in appearance. Doesn't have, the creepy skull face. He doesn't have the, clawed feet and the weird ridges growing on his forearms and stuff. Looks more like, I believe they're called the Gar, right? Is his race, which are basically just blue human-looking dudes. Big upgrade to your vintage Skeletor as far as your detailing, because he gets this really nice paint on his armor. He has much more intricate armor because he actually gets a flowing cape on him, which the original Skeletor toy and even the Filmation take on the character did not possess. You got those really cool glowing effect versions of both Skeletor's staff and his sword, and then he even got unique tooling for the boots, which is really cool, where they kind of resemble Skeletor's, but are just less corrupted looking and look like they would fit a normal person's feet rather than the creepy clawed feet that Skeletor has. And then old Keldor came packaged with this guy right here, another blue character. Look how many blue bad guys there are on this wave. In fact, look how many bad guys there are on this wave. There's literally 2 good guys in this entire wave. It's an incredibly villain-heavy wave, which is not a bad thing by any means, because most toy lines are a little too heavy on the heroic characters, so this is kind of like a nice trade-up. So yeah, Kronus, though you might know him better as Trapjaw. This is a take on the Trapjaw character before he received all of his cybernetic implants and everything. He's a character that actually originated in the 2000X cartoon, but now he's been seemingly kind of retconned into our Origins or vintage, MOTU story. So I think that's really cool, the idea of getting, him and Keldor, who, the Keldor concept predates the 2000X cartoon, but it wasn't really fleshed out till then. So it's really a way of just seeing those characters brought forward into the original storyline. And then lastly, we get this magnificent thing that He-Man's riding in. This is the Wind Raider. Now I don't have the stand here because, I need to fit everything in a single shot, but the Wind Raider is an excellent vehicle that I just reviewed, previously. Has a lot of cool moving parts, the moving wings and tail fin and all that. Has a firing harpoon with a winch that pulls it back in. And then the base itself is adjustable, so you can have it pitch and roll and do all this cool stuff. And also comes apart to attach to the top of Castle Grayskull. So this thing right here has a ton of play value. And I said during its review that it's probably my favorite mount/vehicle, aside from Stridor, who released much more recently. So yeah, really, really cool centerpiece this entire wave. It is the only large object we get for this wave, but it's also one of the largest vehicle type objects we've received in the line so far. So it kind of makes up for, the lack of quantity with sheer size and mass and value. So yes, that is the entire consistency of Wave 5. You can probably tell from how I address different toys that some of these I'm really excited about, and then some of these I feel they're just kind of there, and I don't really care for them either way. The He-Man and Skeletor, I think, are partially an improvement. I think the He-Man, definitely an improvement over Wave 1. I did not like the Wave 1 head. It looked really weird having a cartoon-inspired head on a vintage toy-inspired body. Kind of made his head look too big for his body. So I think this is a massive improvement. The Skeletor, I'm kind of indifferent toward, because rather than looking like the actual vintage head, which was very, I don't know, kind of blurry looking, it's really just like the Wave 1 head with a different expression. So that one I couldn't really care less for either way. Then we get to our core figures. The Faker, he's one of those must-have characters because he is a very famous, very original He-Man character. And as such, he kind of just commands a spot on your shelf. But when you look at what he really is, he is just a blue He-Man. So maybe not the most exciting, unique thing out there. Fisto, easily one of my favorites. Absolutely love the Fisto toy. I love everything about his design, his color scheme. He's definitely top-notch in this wave. Then we get over to our Mer-Man, who I also think is excellent. And just the fact that he's so very different from the regular Mer-Man, and the fact that he has so much unique tooling that just belongs to him and no one else, puts him really high on my list. Evil-Lyn, better than the Wave 1, still very boring. Then we got our 2-pack right here. I think this 2-pack is really cool. It very much fleshes out the Skeletor / Keldor design, gives him lots of cool accessories, cool paint jobs. Kronus, I mean, he's not as cool as Keldor in my opinion, but I still think he's really awesome in how he looks like a pre-cyborg upgrade of Trapjaw, down to having a vest that resembles the metal plating on Trapjaw's chest. So very cool, inventive, just interesting 2-pack with these two. Our Buzzsaw Hordak, again, if you don't have the regular Hordak, definitely the better choice. Get a lot more play value out of this guy. If you do have the regular one though, there's not so much different about him that may really warrant a second purchase. So whether or not he's worth your time is going to be very conditional. And then of course the Wind Raider, easily one of my favorite vehicles, makes for a great display piece, both on the base, off the base, with Grayskull, without Grayskull. Just super, super cool. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of good and a lot of just kind of boring in this wave. Not everything here is a slam dunk, but the ones that are good are very good. So yeah, I could realistically recommend parts of this wave to people, and then other parts, I would say you could just kind of easily skip, especially if you have figures from previous waves. So I guess my list of recommendations here would fall into He-Man and Skeletor. Only get them if you don't already have, the regular versions of them. Same with Evil-Lyn, really, though I do think she is better than the weird, lemon-skinned Evil-Lyn. Faker, you should probably just get him because he's an important character in Master of the Universe. Fisto and Mer-Man, absolutely. Fisto's a very unique-looking character. Mer-Man, huge upgrade to the original. And in his case, I think even if you have the regular version, he's still worth picking up because he's, one, a lot better in my opinion, two, just so different from him that it doesn't feel too samey. The 2-pack, absolutely. If you can still find them at Targets, especially if they're on clearance still, pick it up. Very, very cool. The Hordak, only if you don't already have the regular one. And then the Wind Raider, 100% yes. This thing is super cool. One of the best vehicles out there, and it's going to be a while before there's too many that top this. Now, I do think Stridor is a little bit cooler. And then, of course, when we get Stridor's Evil repaint, that'll, naturally bump this guy out too. And then if we ever get something like Mantisaur, I may place that above this, but this is easily top 3 or so. It's just so good. I'm sure they're still pretty readily available, so I would 100% pick up the Wind Raider. So there you have it. My thoughts on the entire wave, what from this wave is worth picking up, and now I leave it to you. I've given my say, so now I want to know what you all think of this wave. How many of these things do you think are a home run? How many do you think are duds? Do you want the whole wave? Do you want none of the wave? Somewhere in between? Any and all feedback is always welcome in my comment section. If you enjoyed this retrospective, go ahead and toss it a like. The YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me while I take this look back at the entire 5th wave of Masters of the Universe Origins. With all that said, I will see you next time.